How can you justify a 10-year contract for any of these coaches? I'm just being honest. Like, I'm not mad at the agents, and I'm certainly not mad at the coaches. Man, maximize your value. But are you kidding me? 10 years? So the guys that these guys might be coaching on this contract are 8 years old? Are you joking? Like, what are we doing? If you're an administrator, wake up. Like, wake up. Because if you look at some of the contracts right now that have been given to coaches in recent years, there are more bad ones than good ones out there. Let's go through it. We just talked a second ago about Mario Cristobal, did we not? Yeah, well, the contract was 10 years, $80 million. 10 years, $80 million. That was last December. We don't know exactly what the buyout is right now, I might add. Obviously, he's not going to be a one and done. I mean, let's not get carried away, but they're 3-4. I mean, their wins are Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss, and Virginia Tech. They've lost their quarterback. I mean, everybody said, well, Mario Cristobal, he's going to be the guy. He's going to pack Hard Rock Stadium. Like, he's going to be the guy that brings everybody out, and we're going to completely change the culture. He might very well do that. But if he doesn't take significant strides year 2, if he doesn't take significant strides year 3, guess what? You still have 7 more years left on the contract. It makes absolutely no sense. He's not the only one, I might add. There's contracts like that all over the place. How about Brent Venables? And what's going on at Oklahoma? Now, Oklahoma, remember, unique situation. Everyone's biggest fear is the big reason why I think these guys are getting these significant contracts. Everyone's biggest fear is to be Oklahoma, right? To be Oklahoma and to have a great coach leave your school. Now, I know Oklahoma fans have kind of spun it and said, well, hey, look, we're actually better without him. Like, we don't need him. Like, our program was soft. Like, I've heard it all, okay? And I'm not making fun of Oklahoma fans. I hope Brent Venables is great. But I saw just a couple weeks ago, I saw them implode in one of the worst performances by an Oklahoma football team since 1998. And what's his contract situation? 6 years, $43.5 million for a guy that's never been a head coach before. $7+ million a year for a guy that has never been a head coach before. Now, they're 4-3. It appears like things are very different with Dylan Gabriel under center, and I'm optimistic that the recruiting will get better and they'll improve. But we're talking about a fully guaranteed $43.5 million contract for a guy that had never held a position like this before. To me, it doesn't make sense. Not the only one. How about Kirk Ferentz and Iowa? And where they're currently standing. The contract, 8 years, $56 million. It was announced in January. The current buyout, $6 million for the remaining length of the deal, which would be $42 million at the end of this season. Now, the on-field product is, for lack of a better word, painful. I mean, they're 3-4, heading for their first potential losing season in a decade. And the worst part is the refusal to adjust what they're doing offensively is even more troubling. I mean, I don't expect you to all of a sudden turn what you were as an Iowa football team to now, become Mike Leach and turn air raid. No, I don't expect that. But hey, man, what we're doing on offense isn't working. Can we try something different? They're the worst offensive team in the country. 131st out of 131, averaging 227 yards per game. Do you realize that 22% of their offensive snaps, or of their points scored, 22% of their points scored are by the defense? Think about that. We are at the midway point and beyond the midway point. It's week 9, ladies and gentlemen. And 22% of their points scored are by the defense. It's alarming. Really alarming. And then we get to Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker, who has one winning season in his career. One. The contract, 10 years, $95 million. He got that after his third full season as a head coach. 10 years, $95 million. They're 3-4. Their losses coming consecutively by a combined margin of 81 points. Now they bounced back, had a good win against Wisconsin, who, by the way, is also under 500. Or might be at 500 now after last week. I don't know. Wherever they are, they're not great. So, Michigan State, let's say things don't get better in like 2 or 3 years. It's great that you have a billionaire that can stroke the check, but you still are going to owe your head coach like $60 million. And remember, you gave it to him after his third year. Third year. Not at Michigan State, by the way. His third year ever as a head coach. Alarming. James Franklin, similar situation. Obviously, they owe him another $72 million. Steve Sarkisian, obviously, it feels like they're making progress, right? Like they're looking like they're going to be a little bit better, and the number's not too significant. They owe him, $34 million or whatever over 6 years. Not crazy. So if he got fired after this year, they only owe him $15 million. That's really not that bad. I mean, relatively speaking. And then ultimately, to get to the final number and the final one, and there's others, by the way. There are some that I've excluded just for the sake of time. You get my point, okay? But you can't have a conversation about irrational contracts without talking about Jimbo Fisher. He's the granddaddy of irrational contracts. 10 years, $95 million signed before the 2021 campaign. Now, they had a great year in COVID. No one's going to deny that. It was a phenomenal year. Great team, great year, finished number 4 in the country, still lost by 4 touchdowns to the eventual national champion. Now, a lot of teams lost badly to Bama that year. I get it. But if you are going to pay someone $95 million, shouldn't you at least go toe-to-toe with the national champion? Well, you're going to say, well, what about last year? Great. That's awesome. That's probably my biggest pet peeve with what I've seen from A&M. Is that you look great. You look awesome. Awesome. The 2 offensive game plans in the last 2 years that I've liked from A&M came against Alabama. The other 21 game plans, or however many there have been average. And if not average, maybe in some cases below average. There's very little creativity. There's very little movement and motion. You can tell me, well, they lost their starting quarterback. All right, well, Haynes King was their starting quarterback last year at the preseason. Haynes King hasn't developed at all. It looks just okay. The offensive line's not great. I mean, to what justified extending Jimbo Fisher 10 years? If you had to fire him today, that means somebody, or maybe a few different people, have to write a check for $86 million. $86 million. $86 million. That's absurd, y'all. At what point, and I want everyone, I want you, if you're out there listening to this and you're an electrician, I want you to make as much money as you can. If you're a broadcaster, I want you to do as well as you can. If you're a coach, I want you to do as well as you can. And guess what? If you're an administrator at the college level, I want you to do as well as you can. I want everybody listening to this right now, I want you to make as much money in your lifetime as you possibly can. I absolutely want that for you. That is my wish. I'm not saying that I'm mad at people for maximizing the value of their current contract. All I'm saying is, at what point are we going to start acting rationally? Because there's something in college football. There's emotion and fandom and excitement, and I get that, and I appreciate that. It's awesome. I love it. It's why I'm in it. I'm passionate, just like you guys are. But I'm not passionate to the point in which I'm irrational. And giving out 9-figure deals to coaches is irrational. Even if you have 3 or 4 great years, everything could come tumbling down in year 4 and 5. And 6 even. Guess what? You still have 4 more years on the contract. And for what? I know that, yes, there's rare occasion. Well, hey, Mel Tucker was getting talked to by LSU. or by USC. Okay, go ahead. That would be my approach. If I were an administrator, I'd say, go ahead. If they're willing to pay you a 10-year deal, fine. We are not going to be that school. We're just not. If they're willing to pay you $50 million, even though you've never been a head coach before, fine. I'm not doing that. Like, you will earn it here. And if you earn it and there is significant progress being made, then yeah, you'll get paid. But at the school I'm running, you ain't ever getting 10 years. Not happening. It's going to take it's going to take an administrator to say no. It's going to take a board of directors and a board of trustees to say no at some point. Like, dare them. Go ahead. You want to leave? Go for it. Because I bet you more often than not, if you called their bluff, the agent's bluff, there's nowhere else really to go. And there's probably not going to be a place that's going to be as good. Answer me this. Outside of Texas A&M, who would have paid Jimbo Fisher $95 million? LSU? Maybe. I don't know.
I'm going to hit you with a whoa, Nelly. You said that college football administrators are irrational. Aren't college fan bases irrational? Like, if you're a Texas A&M fan and you're watching Georgia, LSU, and Alabama and Auburn win national titles, don't you want to pay the coach, one of 4 active head coaches, the money to try to get you over that hump to get you there? Don't you want to show that your fan base and show that you're invested? If you're Michigan State and you're Penn State and you're watching Ohio State run through the Big Ten, don't you want to sit there and show your fan bases and your alumni and the boosters that you're invested in this? That's why you have to pay. I don't know where else you can put the money towards by putting it towards the coach, which, like Saban set this standard that everybody's trying to live up to. So I guess my question is, you can say go on, but what are you supposed to do for the fan bases to appease an irrational fan base that wants to be there every year?
Well, the fan base is allowed to be irrational. Like, the fan is short for fanatic. No one's expecting a fan to act with cooler heads. Like, no way. The administration's supposed to be like, hey, look, we hear you. But to me, proving that you're committed to trying to win is not giving a coach a 10-year contract. You know how long and how much can change in 10 years? Like, seriously, 10 years ago, I mean, Texas A&M.
BCS.
10 years ago, well, yeah, there was a BCS, but 10 years ago, TCU was in the Big East for like a blink of an eye after leaving the Mountain West. All right, 10 years ago, the Big East was actually a decent football conference. Like 10 years ago, we're sitting here looking at a situation in which, who are some of the best teams in college football? Yeah, Bama, LSU, A&M had just hired Kevin Sumlin, and everyone wants to draw comparisons to Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher. Yeah, well, if you gave Jimbo Fisher Johnny Manziel, I bet you his record would be a little bit better than what it currently is. Just being honest. Like, he's had Kellen Mond, and he's had Max Johnson, and he's had Haynes King. Like, no wonder their record's not as good. Imagine that. So I think looking at like all these different circumstances, and I understand, look, there are ways to prove that you're committed to trying to win, then to spend money on coaches over a ridiculous amount of time. 10 years makes no sense. Oh, that's the going rate. Is it? How about no? How about no, you get a 5-year deal. And if you have a good year, we'll extend it one more year. You have a good year, we'll extend it one more year. And it'll roll over. The reason why it's 5 is because guys now have eligibility that lasts 5 years. And you don't want anyone to be able to push back and say, well, who's your head coach going to be? I mean, yeah, these commitments, these 10-year commitments, they make no sense. Look at the buyout numbers that are being floated every single week. Makes no sense. Like, stop giving dumb contracts, and we'll stop looking at situations in which, guys are underperforming. I mean, I don't blame the agents for trying to get maximum security for these coaches. I don't blame them. I just don't understand why the administrators continue to do it.